Not a professional, I don't have any kind of PhD, I don't have any college training, but the training that I do have is being a survivor of mental health and the devastation that it causes. And so I hope tonight to bring some hope to you as family members and to show you kind of my progression personally. This may hit home for some of you to see, I understand now a little bit more about what I'm going through with someone that I love, and then the way that I personally worked through that. So to get started, I just want to tell you a little bit. My name is Tyler Calbars, and I live in Sarasota, Florida with my family. My wife Valerie and Jack, my son, he's amazing. And just recently I was called an inspiration, which I think is very funny because the only thing that I've ever inspired in my life is for people to hide their keys, their wallets, and their prescription medications. And so it's great to be here with you. And I'd like to talk a little bit to begin with about the power of thought. So ever since I could remember, maybe when I was 4 or 5 years old, I remember knowing that when thoughts came to my mind, that I should just trust them as if they are true, which we know, especially for me, I know that now is not a very safe way to handle life, is to just get a thought and then do something about it. But that's how I grew up. Whether I didn't hear what my parents were trying to teach me or didn't understand what I was supposed to do with thoughts, I'm not really sure. That's just the way that I grew up. And so with that kind of concept of every thought was true, by the time I was 12 years old, that had become my regular operating procedure. And when I was 12 years old, I found myself alone at home one day. I was not expelled from school, but I was politely asked not to return. And so my parents obviously had to work, and my brothers were working as well. And so I found myself alone quite a bit. And one time, very specifically, I remember one time I was playing with Legos, and the Lego slipped in my hand and cut my hand. And instead of getting upset at the Lego or upset at the situation or being mad at whatever else, I turned that anger internally and towards myself. And it became so overwhelming that was the only thing I could think about. And that introduced me to a character that still lives with me today, although he's very much quieter than he used to be. But this character is called the Warden for me. Now, the Warden in my mind, in my imagination, he speaks to me in my own thoughts, in my own voice. But he carries a baton, he's got keys on his belt, and he imprisoned me in the thoughts inside my mind. And those prison bars were thoughts, and so he would take that baton and he'd say, "You're a loser. You'll never amount to anything. You should hate yourself. You should take your life." That's the way the Warden spoke to me, starting at 12 years old. By the time I was 14 years old, the Warden would speak to me every day, all day long. It was constant, and it was a barrage of negative self-hate. And the reason I mentioned 14 years old is because at 14 years is when I discovered something that would give me freedom. It stopped the Warden. It stopped all of the negative self-hatred thoughts that I had going on. I found freedom in heaven, and it was through drug use. And I used that and searched for that for the rest of my life. I wanted that moment where I'd had that freedom that I was given through drug use. I wanted the thoughts to stop. And when I found that, it almost seemed like it was too good to be true, and it certainly was. Over the next 4 years until 18, I would use all kinds of different drugs, mix and match. In some, insane way of trying to find the perfect chemical composition that would make me feel perfect and free all the time. And not only did that not take place, what ended up happening is drugs turned on me so badly that the warden became stronger and bigger and more incessant on taking my life. So at 18, I found a little bit more freedom. I stopped using drugs and found religion. And so I was a religious zealot. I just loved religion. I loved everything about it. But I was also introduced to this next character. This next character also spoke to me in my own voice, using my own thoughts. But he was different than the warden. He was much different than the warden. In fact, he was the opposite of the warden. I call him the achiever. And so his voice sounded like this. You are the greatest thing that's ever taken place on the history of the earth. Like you're a god. If you just practice certain things, you're going to be better than everybody. And I'm so happy to be along for the ride. That's the way the achiever talked to me. So in my 20s, I put so much time and effort into religion that by the time I was done with my 5 to 10 year stint, that's usually about how long I could hang on with the achiever. I was giving talks in front of thousands of people, biblical talks. I spent hundreds of hours studying. I never needed any sleep. I never needed sleep. I slept just so that other people wouldn't think I was crazy. If that makes any sense. It made sense to me.
Yeah, you're my son.
So, what that does is it creates this cyclical nature within my life. I go up with the achiever. I reach these unreal and unrealistic things. And the weight of that achievement crashes me to the ground. Like I literally cannot continue on because I'm never sleeping. I'm probably using heavy drugs. I'm probably doing things that are just beyond what a normal human being can tolerate. Thinking the whole time, because I'm achieving such great success, that I'm doing great. That's my judgment. I'm doing great because I'm achieving these great things. And then it's like the rug's pulled out underneath me, and I crash and burn. And then the warden steps in, and he reminds me, see what I told you? I told you you weren't good enough. I told you you'd never amount to anything. I told you you need to just take your life. That process of up and down lasted my whole life until 2022. So I'll paint a little bit of the scenario. So in 2022, I had started a business using the achiever. Once again, everything was great. I had 18 employees. I did work in Orlando and Sarasota and Tampa. There was just one problem. I didn't have any money. I was using drugs heavily. That costs a lot of money. And growing a business at that rate is just so expensive. And so the warden was coming. He was coming for me. But then, all of a sudden, I'm in the tree business, by the way, in that. Then and now. But then, all of a sudden, this hurricane starts coming in and is going to hit Sarasota. And is going to change my life forever. I mean, the achiever told me that. He said, if I just bring as many people as possible to Sarasota, that my life will change forever. I'll make millions and millions of dollars. All my problems will go away, and I'll find the thing that I've been looking for my whole life. So I did that. And I set myself up for the biggest crash of my life. And so the storm, Ian, was supposed to hit Sarasota, but it eventually turned south. And with it, all my dreams. With it, all of the ideas that I could somehow break free from this cycle by becoming rich. And I broke. I was broken. And it was scary. It's pretty scary. You know, to me, I had never been afraid of myself. You know, like, I never was afraid of what I might do. And in that period of time, I was so afraid of myself, of what I might do to myself, to anybody. I had no control over what I was capable of, and I had never been in that place before. And the warden was at his greatest. He was at his highest. He talked to me constantly. And he passed the judgment, which was that it was definitely time for me to no longer be alive. I had attempted to take my life several times, but this time was different. This time I really meant it, and this time I wouldn't survive. And so that's what I did. October 19th, 2022, I ended my life in the vehicle of my truck. However, things were not going to happen that way. That's not how it was going to end for me. I had made a phone call to someone telling them goodbye and was unable to shut my phone off before I passed out. And I was already being looked for 2 weeks by the police. So that phone was pinged by the police, and they showed up in time to pull me out of the vehicle and save my life. So I'm on my back, and I'm staring up at this sky that has white, perfectly white, puffy clouds with this background of blue. And I just start kind of, I know that it wasn't funny. I was not laughing because things were funny. I was laughing because I had gone to a place that I never expected to come back from. In an attempt really to answer questions, and I know that may not really make a whole lot of sense, but that's just my story. You know, my whole life was spent trying to find answers to what's wrong with me. You know, like I just wanted to know, like, dude, you know, like what the heck, what is going on? What do I need to do differently? And I was convinced that someone had the answer. Like someone has to have the answer somewhere. There has to be a paper that someone can pull out of a safe and hand to me and say, there's your answer, dude. And I looked everywhere for that. I looked in religion, philosophy. I tried to have a lot of money. I also gave up on having money and had none. I had a house. I went bankrupt. I did everything, all the things, in this attempt to find someone who had a safe that could open the safe and hand me that letter. And every time I would get to the safe, it would be empty. And I would go to the next one, and it would be empty. And here I am, lying on my back. This one's empty too. Like, this isn't possible. And it dawned on me as I'm laying there fighting for my life that I was looking for answers out there. Like, I always thought that the answer was somewhere out there. Someone, something, you know, something had the answer to all of these problems that I have. But I realized that the thing that I was running from or running towards was in the place I was running from. Like what I wanted was out there, that's what I thought, but it was actually inside me the whole time. Now here's the problem. I'm batshit crazy. And I have paperwork to prove it. How does a batshit crazy person help themselves? We're going to get to that in a minute. While I'm laying there and I'm having this huge epiphany and my mind is just exploding with ideas and thoughts. My mom, who had died several years prior, speaks to me. Now, I don't know really how that happened. I'm not claiming that this was, all I know is that it sounded like it was coming from the place where you talk to yourself. And she said, "You'll never be successful," meaning successful at taking my own life. So you might as well find your purpose. And so I got to a hospital, and I was sitting in the hospital bed, and I was thinking, my whole life, I'd never been diagnosed with anything, because anytime I went into a mental hospital, I would always lie to them. And I'm pretty good at lying, man. And I'm really good at making you believe what I believe. Like, if I believe it, I can make you believe it. That's my talent. That's how I survived this whole time having bipolar, and nobody believed that I had bipolar. It's crazy. I was 40 years old, and no one my whole life had ever really said, "You know what, I think this dude's got bipolar," you know what I mean? Because that's how I was when I went there to these mental hospitals. So I'm sitting in this bed and I'm saying, what if? Like, dude, what if I just go in there and I tell them the truth? Like, what if I just take whatever medication they tell me to take, which was 900 milligrams of lithium, which I still take today. What if I just take whatever they tell me to take? And then when I go and I'm sitting next to this dude I'm sharing a bedroom with in this mental hospital, and he's telling me that I shouldn't be taking this medication because they're trying to screw with my head somewhere. What if I just don't listen to him and I just do what I'm supposed to do? What if I go and I meet with my therapist and my therapist says, "Your life depends on you living by a schedule," and I just live by a schedule? What if I go and I work out? What if I go and I meditate because she told me to? What if I once a week, every week, rain or shine, reset my mind every week like she tells me to? All right, I'll do that too. And so I just played that what if game. Like, what if I just did everything opposite of what I've ever done when I went here before? And just try it. What do I have to lose? Literally, what do I have to lose? I know what I could do, and that's still an option, I guess. But like, why don't I just do something different? So that's what I did. I just kind of what if'd myself into doing stuff. And when I was in the hospital, I met with a team of psychiatrists. And I'm so egotistical. I'm like, dude, the whole team's here, man. Like, let's get going. So I meet with this team, and the doctor there, the head doctor, was so amazing because he took his time. He helped me to understand what I was dealing with. And he said a few things. He said, one, you have what's called diabetes of the brain. And if you take your insulin, which is the medication, every day, you will at least keep the diabetes at bay. And I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. I'm going to use that. And then he said, medication, therapy will not cure you. I'm like, well, that's kind of messed up. Like, why would you say that, dude? And he said, because most people think that medication and therapy cures them, and that's insane. Medication and therapy are meant to do this for you. They're meant to give you space between thoughts. And in that space is your power to choose. And so what it made me feel like is it empowered me because, I was so afraid to have a mental illness. I think that's the part that's so tough is like, if you're mentally ill, you have no control over yourself or what you're doing. And what this doctor was telling me was that not only do you have control, it's expected that you control what you're doing. And it was so foreign to me. Like, you're telling me I can have bipolar 1, but also do something about it? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, dude, that's nuts. So he said, in your space, that space needs to be increased. So I have this like 3-word thing: medication, meditation, observation. Medication gives me this much space. But you know what? Meditation gives me this much space. And meditation isn't always spiritual. It could be anything. Like, it doesn't require you to be sitting cross-legged. That's not necessarily always meditation. Meditation could be walking through the woods, hanging out with friends. Meditation could be fishing. Whatever your meditation is that puts you in that happy place, certainly it can be meditation in the traditional sense. Absolutely it can be. And there's many forms of it, but it doesn't have to be that way. It can be anything that someone chooses. And then finally, so as we get to spread those spaces out, there's a reason why I'm talking about this, because for me, this is what has helped me the most. What I'm talking about right now is the most helpful part of my recovery. Meditation gave me the space to get meditation and get this kind of space. Observation gave me this kind of space. So what observation means is once I get enough space in between thoughts, they become slower. Part of, I don't know if it's every single mental illness, but I would say most of them, is that the space between thoughts is like this. When you're talking to someone that is in the middle of a crisis, you're not speaking with them. You're speaking with their thoughts. And my thoughts, if you're trying to talk to my thoughts, dude, you got a problem. It's going to be scary. So the goal is to spread out the space between thoughts for me. And then once I get it out to here, I can observe those thoughts. So what does that mean? Well, the warden still lives in my mind. And he likes to play around sometimes. And he comes out and he'll start saying some crazy stuff, and hitting the baton against the prison bars and making all kinds of noise so that I pay attention to him. And my job is to observe those thoughts. Oh, what's up, warden? Crazy. Just let him be. And he'll do what clouds do. Clouds come from nowhere and they go nowhere. And so my job is to observe those thoughts, let them be, and let them die a natural death. Then I might get a really good thought like, hey, start a family, be a good husband, be a good father, be loving, be kind, go and speak in front of people and help them to feel better about themselves. When I see those thoughts, now I can take them in. I can do something with them. So, I need one of those finger traps. No, you guys got to keep yours. You got to play along. All right. All right, so we're all going to take our finger traps. I want to show you something. So I'm sure you all know how to do this. You push all the way in, and your fingers are going to go all the way in, right? And then as you pull out your fingers, you'll see that the more resistance that you put on this thing, the tighter it gets. This is how the mind works. This is how the mind works, not just with people that have mental illness. This is how the mind works with every human on the planet. And I'll show you how. Now you can be done with that. Let's go back to my warden friend over here, okay? He comes walking in like he owns the joint, talking to me about who knows what. And what I'm usually taught to do is to resist this thought. I shouldn't feel that way. I shouldn't have that thought. I'm better than that. I've been in recovery long enough to not even have the warden coming around. And I start resisting that thought, and it's just like that finger trap. As soon as I resist that thought and I push it away, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I cannot fight the warden. He's too big. He's too big for me. I can't fight the achiever either. So the best thing to do is to surrender, to realize that that thought exists and be okay with it, and to remind myself that I'm crazy and I'm going to have some crazy thoughts, and that's okay. It's okay to think crazy. It's not okay to resist it. It's not okay to bring it in and play with it. And then finally, just as a closing message, I guess. So, my mom, no one knew what was wrong with me. Like, no one knew. She didn't know. No one knew. And she worked tirelessly to find an answer for me, you know. Regular medications made me worse. And so she had this group of friends similar to NAMI. I don't know if it was a NAMI group. I think it was, but they would meet at homes back then. This was a long time ago. And I remember one day, I must have been 15 or 16. I'm in my room, and there was 5 of them in the living room, 5 parents. Each individually had one child that was like me, and I remember one of them saying, you know, I don't even care if it's my child. I just want one of these 5 to get out of this. And, you know, I look at you as family members that are going through that same situation. And no doubt you probably felt like my mom. And at least you can look at one success story. And my success is your success. Your power gives me the strength to go on. And that's all I got. Thanks.